Today on the Star Trek Critic, it's time for some mid-season comedy with Deja Q. As usual, each episode is graded like a school project, starting with 100 points, taking 1 point away for each error, and I make snarky comments all the way through. On a serious note, the Enterprise needs to keep this big moon from falling into the planet and destroying it. The first point is lost here. If that moon gets within 500 kilometers of the planet, it will drag half the atmosphere and the oceans away with it. 1 point lost for not taking Riker's suggestion. Blowing it up Armageddon style could send the pieces in directions away from the planet if they calculate it right. 1 point lost for Star Trek never naming the continents. The planet is round. The western continent will constantly change unless the planet is flat. Geordi says 47, that is the Star Trek equivalent of a hidden Mickey. Riker misquotes his favorite U2 song. Picard says he prefers skinny girls. Riker has Worf call for more ships to help push the moon. None show up or even report that they are on their way, so minus 1 point for the writers for getting that call for help. Picard goes into Oliver Twist mode, asking for more. Riker says, "What the hell?" Of course, that's all he ever says. In reality, this moon would have to be super small to actually work, and their attempts are ruined by a naked man hanging from the ceiling. 1 point lost here. Geordi is up on the bridge too soon. He should have talked by monitor and stayed in engineering, which just burned out. 1 point is lost for Q still being on the bridge. If they had time to get him some clothes, they also had time to escort him off the bridge. And did he get dressed on the bridge? He should have done that in the conference room at least. This is Picard maneuver number 1. Q got fired from his own species. According to this comment, there is a hierarchy in the Q. It wasn't like they all just voted him out. Q poses like Peter Pan. Picard's like, "I didn't sign up to be your jailer." Deanna calls Q the left fielder.
The left fielder's name. Why?
Q says, "Jean-Luc, you're one of my top 8 on MySpace, and I thought the Enterprise was a sanctuary ship." I don't think they're convinced he lost his powers. Worf's arms are crossed, then they are instantly at his side, so minus 1 more point. Worf does Picard maneuver number 2. This comment here makes you think Qs are normally naked. 1 point lost for the security guard sitting there and doing nothing when he's getting a prisoner put in a cell. Just a reminder, these videos don't tell the entire episode, so I always encourage everyone to go watch them completely. Riker predicts the future. Of course it isn't Q causing the moon's deterioration. Or is he? Picard thinks they don't have any choice. I say throw Q out the airlock, then you'll know. Even the residents of the planet call it the Western Continent. They would have a name for it, wouldn't they? As usual, Riker is exactly 1 foot behind Picard, like the little ass-kisser that he is. Oh look, the guard finally notices that there's someone in his cell. Another point lost since the Calamarain probably cannot travel warp speeds. Look quick, a little piece of rubber is bouncing around by Picard's feet. 1 point lost here. You don't nod at the captain of the ship when he comes in, you stand up. And what is that by the pillow? Is it a lipstick or a vape pen? Another point lost for the guard having his back to the prisoner. That's stupid. Shout out to the writer's timing of the humor in this show. 1 point lost for taking Q to engineering instead of bringing a computer to the brig. Data says I, number 1. The whole purpose of this scene is so Data can tell Q he has no emotions. 1 major point lost here. Perigee is when the moon is closest to the planet. They should push the moon at its apogee when it's farther away and it's less dangerous. They should know that. After all, they are scientists. Q hurt his back. 1 point lost here. The Brielle scientist would have seen that. Q's advice is no help at all. Geordi and Data call Q the second baseman. Dr. Crusher gives Q what he deserves. And again, the humor in this episode is excellent, but I can only show still photos due to copyright claims. Geordi says wrap a warp field around the moon to make it lighter and push it. Maybe they should wait for some of those extra ships to come and help them out. Beverly has nothing but love for Q. Data and Q perform synchronized sitting. Data talks about lubricating his biofunctions. The two lovers reunite. Q never bleeds from this, so minus 1 point. Q calls Guinan the second baseman. And here come the 10 chocolate sundaes. As usual, they meet a life form that lives in space and act like they've never seen that before. They all call the Calamarain the third baseman. Data and Q do the "I'm being attacked by the Calamarain" dance. Guinan has nothing but love for Q. 1 point lost for the captain's log talking down to the audience like we didn't know what happened before the commercials. The stars are not moving, and now they are, so minus 1 point. Riker says throw him out the airlock. Deanna has less than 5 lines, so minus 1 point. Look at how excited she is. Worf says I, number 3. It turns out these two argued as much as these two. Q compares the Enterprise crew to minions. That's what she said. Jean-Luc almost does the Picard maneuver. 1 point lost for taking Q into engineering because he's honestly no help at all. Personally, I'm not convinced they can push the moon with a warp field, so -1 point. 1 point lost for the black square on the back panel to prevent reflections. 1 point lost here. If the Enterprise got thrown into the atmosphere with a warp bubble in front of it, there would be serious damage to the planet. And one more time, Data and Q do the Calamarian is attacking me dance. Here they mention Data has fluids in his systems. Data saved Q's life, but Picard gives credit to the first baseman. Look closely, Picard tells the guard to stay with Q. Q's guard is now missing, so -1 point. Q contemplates the left fielder. Q is having a human emotional meltdown. Q goes to sickbay without his guard and quasi-thanks Data. Data says, "What the hell is all that about?" 1 point lost here. Q would not be able to get a shuttlecraft out of the shuttle bay. Transporter room operator says, "I number 3. Q says, "Don't do the Star Trek thing for me." Riker shouts the only line he knows how to say. The Qs argue about one selfless act, and Q gets his powers back. Does this Q outrank him, or does he just instigate the others to vote him out? Q's back to his annoying self, but they're keeping an eye on him this time. Now they lost a perfectly good shuttle. Look closely, I think Worf's had a little too much of Q. Q's left hand is on the trumpet, now it's not, so -1 point. Riker is super excited.
Swell.
Riker is so pissed he even turns down free girls. Worf gets the free girls instead and he's thinking, it's a good thing Wesley's not on the bridge, he's not old enough to see them. Q leaves and gives Data the gift of laughter. Aww. -1 point here. The moon would not be in a circular orbit, it would be an elliptical orbit. The people of Brielle thank the Enterprise crew, even though it was Q that did that. The ensign says, "I number 4, but they would not leave right away, so -1 more point. And the show ends with Picard demanding Data take a drug test.
Mr. Data, your analysis?
I guess he thought Data was laughing because he was on some really good drugs. One last Picard maneuver, and they fly off into space. So, who were the Q? Betty Muramoso has 10 screen credits, Richard Cancino has over 200 screen credits as a voice actor, and Corbin Benson has over 259 screen credits, most notably LA Law, Psych, and multiple soap operas. And John Delancey will be back as Q several more times. Deja Q, which is welcome comic relief, gets a score of 72. Yes! Thanks for viewing. Be sure to leave comments below, click that like button, the share button, and that subscribe button, and I'll see you again soon. Hold on a second. Did they ever get their shuttle back? We will never know.